Okay, so yeah, mergers and takeovers, they sound, yeah, we've looked at a variety of different ones. They all sound great. Unfortunately, when you look at the research, it depends on which research that you look at. Yeah, but 70 to 90%, yeah, of mergers or takeovers or whatever end up destroying shareholder value. In other words, the combined value, the performance of the organisations together is worse than what would have happened, as best as anybody could tell, had they not bothered merging at all in the first place. And this research goes back a hell of a long way. Yeah, so when I was at university, which was a very long time ago, there was a paper that we read from, I can't remember, the 50s or 60s or something. It was by a guy called Meeks. Yeah, and its title was "Mergers: A Disappointing Marriage." And it appears to be the case that, over the last, must be getting on for 80 years now, the majority of mergers actually end up not generating, the benefits that we've talked about before. That in reality, most of them, some of them are fabulously successful. That's why firms go ahead with them. They think they're going to be one of the successful ones. The majority fail for a variety of reasons. So, why might that be? The obvious reason, particularly in the case of takeovers, is overpaying. And the reason you're going to overpay is it's almost inevitable, which is, you need to persuade the existing shareholders of a business to sell. Well, they're only going to sell if they get more money than they have at the moment. But the price of a share, on the stock exchange reflects what the market currently thinks it is. So if the price of Sainsbury's shares is at £3.50 at the moment, the market believes that that's what Sainsbury's is worth. So if you're going to persuade shareholders to sell, you're going to have to offer them more than £3.50. Maybe 25, 30, 35% more. So you're immediately paying more for something than it's worth. Now, it may make sense. There may be synergies. It may be that to you, the organisation is worth more. Disney bought Marvel's back catalogue, kind of 20, 30 years ago. They bought all the rights to the comics. They paid quite a lot for that. But as we've all seen over the last 20 years, that's led to a very large amount of money for Disney because they were able to make films out of it and so on. But so the obvious risk is you're gonna overpay to make sure that you buy this thing, unless you can therefore generate either a lot of extra revenue or reduce costs significantly. That's going to damage you overall. A second set of related concepts relate to the idea of culture or culture clash. When you take two organisations and join them together, well, that all sounds lovely, but the reality is that most organisations have different ways of doing things. Whose methods are you going to use? If it's a merger, then which ways of doing things? Are we going to be informal? Or are we going to be formal? What sort of communications are we going to rely on? And that's going to take time to establish. And may indeed never be established. It's again leading to communication breakdowns, which then takes to the obvious risk that we talked about elsewhere, of internal diseconomies of scale. The organisation is just much bigger, than it was before. And if you've got culture clash and communication difficulties, that makes it even more likely, that costs are going to go up. Another problem with most mergers is what's called post-merger integration. Theoretically, we're saying that as a result of merging these organisations, we should get huge cost savings. But the reality is, that after you take these two organisations together, after these two organisations join, you've actually got to make them work together. A clear area in which there's going to be a lot of time and money spent is IT. When Dover Brooks got taken over by Nord Anglia, we were we were trying to merge our IT systems. We were both Microsoft organizations, yeah, but it still resulted in a complete set of carnage as people were locked out, stuff was lost, and so on and so forth. Trying to put together two databases is a very, very difficult, time-consuming, expensive way of going about things. Or human resources. Yeah, suddenly we've got to make sure that everybody's on the same payroll. Yeah, and we transfer all the data. Blah, 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 blah. This is time-consuming and expensive. A fifth risk, is to do with the employees themselves, and what it is that you're buying. There is a big danger, that key staff actually leave. In other words, if you're not careful, the people who made the business that you're buying successful decide, that they've had enough and that they go. So, and then what have you bought? Well, you bought a load of assets, but in certain types of businesses, like let's suppose we're talking about fashion or something, the success of fashion businesses depends on the people who are working within them. If they all leave, then you've ended up paying a lot of money for a bunch of old designs, last year's stuff. That's a danger. And sixthly, just kind of linked to the first one, overpaying, there's a massive amount of information asymmetry involved in takeovers, because competition regulations limit what you're allowed to tell. We talked about collusion before. One way in which firms collude is by information sharing. There are rules against that. But therefore, given I want to take you over, but I haven't done so, there are actual legal limits to what I can find out about your business. And therefore, it may well be that I get an unpleasant shock when I actually take it over, and I end up, again, it's another reason, that I might end up, kind of overpaying for something. And the last kind of main obvious point, is regulation. The organisation just became a lot bigger than it was before. Therefore, it's much more likely to get regulatory attention. More forms to fill, and more restrictions on what you're doing, just because you're so much bigger and more dominant within the market. And again, that can drive up your costs. So, in a variety of different ways, it may well be the case that what you're expecting to get out of this, the increased revenue or the reduced costs, don't actually come about. A lot of it is because of the practicalities of taking something over. Either you pay too much, or as you try to make these organisations work together, the costs involved in doing that are just much higher than you thought they were going to be.